All right, physical science students. Oh, sorry. So we are going to get started with kinetic energy practice. So you should have, at this point, if you're watching this, taken your notes on kinetic energy. So if you did that, you know that there is a formula that we need to have in order to calculate kinetic energy. So the formula we're going to be using for this type of energy, and potential energy is a different formula, but for kinetic energy, and I'm just going to write it right here, we are going to be using kinetic energy is equal to half the mass times velocity squared. So this is something that should be in your notebooks and in your brains. So remember that velocity is our meter over seconds or our distance over time. That's going to be squared. Very important. Don't forget that. And then we have our mass, so grams, kilograms, all that, multiplied by a half or 0.5 if you're going to put it in your calculator. So there needs to be some sort of velocity in order for there to be some sort of kinetic energy. And the reason that is because if this was 0 and this was being multiplied by whatever numbers these were, the outcome would still be 0, right? Anything multiplied by 0 is 0. Therefore, if there is no movement, there's no velocity, there's no distance over time with the direction, then there's no kinetic energy. So we're going to go over a couple of these. It's going to be, hey, is there kinetic energy being, in this example, yes or no? So is a car moving down the road? So if the car is in motion, that means it's covering some sort of distance over some amount of time, which means velocity is being used. So yes, there is kinetic energy. A car is parked. So if a car is parked, that means it's not moving. So there's no motion, which means there's no velocity. So there is no kinetic energy. And then I will let you answer these last two on your own. So we're going to go over a couple examples, a couple word problems, calculate our kinetic energy, and then you'll have to have this in your notebooks. So let's get started. I have a 580 kilogram truck is moving at 5.6 meters for every second. So I need to figure out what the kinetic energy is. Well, that's going to be pretty easy. I am going to write down my formula. So kinetic energy is equal to half times my mass times my velocity squared. And then we're going to plug and chug. So this is a simple equation where all I have to do is just plug in my numbers. And luckily, I have my calculator here. So let's get to it. So my mass is 958 kilograms. My velocity, not volume, velocity is 5.56 meters for every second. So actually, let me keep this consistent. So this is my mass. This is my velocity. Turn on my calculator. So the way I do this is I like to do this in chunks because with calculator, when you put too many things in there, things tend to get messed up. But if I do this step by step, there's more clarity. So first thing I always like to do is I like to fill in the parts of the formula that I do have. So that half is consistent and constant, so that goes there no matter what. I'm going to put in my mass, which was 958 kilograms. And I'm going to put in my velocity, which was 5.56 meters for every second squared, right, because that travels with that velocity. And then I'm going to plug it into the calculator. So the first thing I'm going to do is my velocity, just so I can get that exponent out of the way. So here we go. So 5.56. And you can use the square button on your calculator, or you can just multiply it by the same number. Just use square. And it's 30.91. And I'm just going to cut off at the hundredths because that's what that is there. Scoot that over. So now I have my kinetic energy is equal to half times my mass, 958 kilograms, times my velocity, which we did in our calculator, which is equal to 30.91 meters for every second. Okay. So now it's going to be a little easier just to plug into my calculator. So I'm going to bring back my calculator. You can also do this by hand. It's not a horrible thing, but these are big numbers. So in my calculator, I'm going to put 0.5 times 958 times 30.91. And I get 14,805.89. So I'm going to throw that at my kinetic energy is equal to 14805.89, comma. All right. So remember, it's an energy. So the unit we're going to want to use is joules. And joules is represented by the letter J. So after all that niceness, there is my final answer for number 1. All right. So we had our mass, we had our velocity, and then we just needed to find our energy. So let's try one where we might have to do a little more manipulation with our numbers. Let's try number 7. Scoot this up a little bit more. Excellent. So same thing. We're still finding out what, we're still using the kinetic energy formula. So I always like to write it down every single time so that I not only get to memorize it, but then I can always go back to it if I get lost. And then I like to look at my words and see what I actually have and then try to find out what I'm trying to find. So my bullet has 5,789 joules of kinetic energy. And then it's traveling at 450 meters for every second. What is the mass of the bullet? So we're going to plug in our numbers. So if I have 5, 7, 8, 9 joules, keep my units consistent, is equal to 1/2, because remember that's just part of the equation, times my mass, which I don't know what it is because that's what I need to find, times my velocity, which is 450 meters for every second. And remember, that is squared, and that square only goes towards that velocity. So there's a little more algebra that needs to happen along here. So what we're going to be doing is cleaning this side up first and then moving things over here. All right, so first things first, I'm going to get my calculator and I'm going to square this number. So 450 times 450 is going to give me 202,500 or 202,500 meters for every second. So I'm going to write that down. So I'm going to bring my formula over here and clean things up a bit. So I have 5,789 joules is equal to 1/2 mass. I don't know what that is yet. Times this 202,500 meters for every second. Ooh, okay. So now I want to get rid of this half. So I don't know what it is when it comes to my mass, but I can multiply my 1/2 times this big number. So I didn't clear it on my calculator, so I'm going to bring my calculator over, and I'm going to multiply it by 0.5, which is going to give me half. So 5,789 joules is equal to 101,250 meters for every second times my mass. And then I just have to get that out of there. So what I'm going to do is just divide that out. And you can do this right on the calculator. You don't even have to try to fit everything in if it can't fit. But I like to fit everything in because it keeps me focused. So now I'm left with, oh, we need more room. So now I'm left with my mass on one side. Bring bring this little thing over. So my mass is on one side, and then I have this number divided by this number. So I'm going to clear my calculator and take my 5, 7, 8, 9 and divide it by this 101,250. Oh, poo. I didn't do that right. So 5, 7, 8, 9 divided by 101,250 equals. And you can see our mass is actually pretty small, and I'm only going to do it to the nearest hundredth, which is this 5. And because there's a 7 next to it, I just need to make sure I do rounding rules. So I'm going to go 0.06 kilograms. And this is my final answer. So there's a few options. There's different ways to manipulate this, but you got to remember your basic algebra and then what you're finding. So please take the time to look at the words, look at the units that's next to it. So that's how I know it's kinetic energy. And this is how I know it's velocity, because it has this meters for every second. So I'm going to put velocity. And then what I need to find is my mass. I hope this was helpful. Please, please, please ask questions in class. And don't ever be afraid to get something wrong and have somebody else help you. I'll talk to you guys later.